The talk is A Brief History, the Carbon Footprint Edition. So, we have been on this planet for about 4.5 billion years. I think in the history of man, that's probably a really long time, but I feel like it's one of those things in the history of the universe, it's actually like a drop in the bucket type of thing. Humanity has been around for around 200,000 years, with the full evolution. For most of our time on Earth, it has been uninhabitable. Volcanoes, there was no oxygen, there was toxic gases, it was hot as hell. So let's start here. So in the Precambrian era, this era lasted about 4 billion years. The CO2 atmospheric concentration was around 10,000 parts per million. So that just means, how much CO2 is in the atmosphere, which is a big measurement that we do today as well. So that was the Precambrian era. This represented over 80% of our planet's lifetime. It was uninhabitable, and we had very high CO2 concentrations in the atmosphere. Now, next, it was the Phenolic era. A mouthful. And during this time, the CO2 atmospheric concentration was around 4,000 to 7,000 parts per million. This era marked abundant animal and plant life. Next, we have the Mesozoic era. This is the age of the dinosaurs. We saw early development of mammals, we saw evolution of flowering plants, and the CO2 concentration was around 1,000 to 2,500 parts per million, and this era lasted for about 200 million years. And then next, we have the Cenozoic era. This era is really the age of mammals. We had an ice age, we had early human civilization as well, around 15 million years, and the CO2 concentration then was 280 to about 1,000 parts per million, maybe the other way around, 1,000, then dropping to 280 parts per million. Now, we are in the Holocene epoch. I talked to Jesse about, say that word, is it epoch? I don't know. But we are now in the Holocene epoch. Started about 11,700 years ago. And in this epoch, we had a stable climate, we had evolution of mammals, we had the last ice age, and essentially, in the 4.5 billion years that we've been here, we currently live in an epoch that started like paradise. Imagine yourself at the beginning of 11,000 years ago. What did the air smell like? What are you smelling? What sense are you getting? What are you hearing? The biodiversity on our planet at that time is remarkable. I wish I could go and see all of the different waterfalls that were so pristine back then. And the concentration of CO2 in the land of paradise is 280 parts per million. So let's start here. So in 1492, that's when Columbus discovered the New World. The CO2 concentration was 280 parts per million. Right? He got to live in paradise. Now, in 1896, we had our first Olympics, modern Olympics, and the CO2 concentration then was around 295 parts per million. So the Industrial Revolution had already started, those fossil fuels were burning. In 1912, the Titanic sank, and during this time, the CO2 concentration was 300 parts per million. In 1960, the Beatles were born. The CO2 concentration then was around 315 parts per million. Now, obviously, a really important one, Taylor Swift was born in 1989, and the CO2 concentration by then had surpassed 350 parts per million. It was 352. When the iPhone was first released in 2008, the concentration was 384 parts per million. And during the pandemic, we were at 414 parts per million. Last year, in 2023, the average CO2 concentration was around 421 parts per million. So we went from paradise to 280 parts per million to today 421 parts per million. And if we want to get back to paradise, we have a lot of work to do. I know it seems like, from a numbers perspective, 280 to 421 doesn't seem like a lot, but if anyone in the room understands gigaton scale of carbon, you're probably crying in the back of the room because everyone's trying to reach that type of scale. But we have a lot of work to do. We have a lot of smart people in this room. We have a lot of smart people on this planet. The more people we can get carbon literate, the faster we can get there, scale better solutions, bring urgency. I think our politicians, our C-suites, our boardrooms really need to understand the bigger picture. And here are two action items. So, first of all, you can find out what the CO2 concentration is, or was, when you were born. So you can scan the QR code there. If you want to make a little profile photo, you can upload your photo and be cool like me. All right. You didn't put a name tag on, did you? And so that's the first action. And then the second action is, what do you think the CO2 concentration will be in 2030? Maybe you want to share that on Twitter, on Instagram, on LinkedIn, or come up and share it to me later. But that's a question that I think we should all ponder.